Puis là, Marc Miller, le nouveau ministre fédéral de la Culture, vient dire qu'il est tanné du débat sur le déclin du français. Quelle honte! Marc Miller, là, c'est une honte pour tous les Québécois. Je ne sais pas comment il va faire pour se présenter dans une activité culturelle au Québec après avoir dit des conneries comme ça.
Tell us how you really feel, Frankie. James Mennie from the Montreal Gazette joins us now. Marc Miller says the quiet part out loud in both official languages, and François Legault is not very happy about it.
Oh, never mind that, Robin. First of all, what an unexpected pleasure to be talking to you. But all that said, Robin, that's the shot, the chaser. And I don't think we have that clip, but the chaser is Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the Parti québécois, who is turning around and essentially accusing, because Marc Miller was not just the minister responsible for official languages, he's also in charge of culture. And federal culture money is as good as anyone else's money here in Quebec, and a lot of cultural associations welcomed his nomination. They praised him as being someone who'll be au courant with the dossier. They're looking forward to working with him. And this just sent Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon over the freaking edge, okay? Mm-hmm. He said the intellectual vacuity and groveling of a substantial part of the Quebec cultural sector is embarrassing, and I am ashamed. And this is where he really anteed up. He accused them of lacking loyalty to Quebec and to the francophonie. Now, I want people to let that sink in, that when you have someone who's turning around saying, you are not as opposed as I am to a particular regime, to a particular politician, to a particular point of view, therefore you lack loyalty to Quebec. And I got to tell you, Robin, when those words were taken back to some of the cultural organization leaders who had basically it was like boilerplate cliche, I look forward to working with Marc Miller. They turned around and said, it's kind of scary coming from a guy who might be premier of Quebec. And that really is spooky. We knew that there was a thin skin around Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. We knew that occasionally he does tend to go off the deep end. Not often, which is why his party is doing so well in the polls that we'll get to in a second. And it has always been, the PQ's success has always been defaulting because they don't look as nuts or as confused or as chaotic as any of the other parties in the National Assembly. But clearly there was a showdown, a kind of throwdown, a slam poetry reading between François Legault and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon over who could stomp more over Marc Miller, who quite frankly simply said out loud what a lot of people already know, that, and he didn't say that, French is not a danger, but he basically said, yes, fragile, it's got to be protected, but I'm scared of this. And I loved it. He referred to it as this dogma on the part of certain, political parties or politicians that it's always endangered and it's a crise and this and that. Believe me, Marc Miller, this ain't his first rodeo. He chose his words quite carefully. He knew the effect they would have. And I think, quite frankly, if Legault and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon are freaking out right now, it's because Deputy Marc is making it clear that there's a new sheriff in town. His name is Mark Carney, because in fact in the House, Carney stood up for Miller and backed up what he had to say, which is an interesting change from when I think she was the Minister of Culture, Adrienne I'm going to get her name wrong. She was a federal MP. She still is a federal MP. And she had said, well, she didn't think that the French language was in culture. She got bounced out of cabinet quicker than you can say, oh, my gosh, quicker than you can say Québécois. You know what I'm saying? So this is it. So now clearly there's been a change. But once again, I think it's, and I loathe the expression, but I think to a certain extent, Robin, it's a very big teaching moment for all Quebecers, Francophone and Anglophone, that as far as Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is concerned, if you do not toe the line with the PQ's particular view of a regime or a politician, you are lacking in loyalty to Quebec. And you're talking to a guy here, Robin, who did not jump on the bandwagon calling for PSPP's head when he said, I want to get Anglos on, they'll be 100% Quebecer. I heard the whole quote. He could have meant simply that, once Quebec is separate, we won't be sharing our nationality. We will be, by definition, 100% Quebecer. I'll cut him some slack on that, but not on this. This is the kind of dangerous stuff that makes people, and maybe in the end, it'll if you believe it in Quebec and Canada, maybe in the end it's good news, because this is the kind of stuff that leaves people, sort of like scratching their heads, saying, "What the hell did he just say?" And it's clear, I guarantee you, if he does get challenged on it, he's simply going to double down again. But I got to tell you, it is. I know some people refer to it as a competition between the PQ and the CAQ to court the so-called nationalist vote in Quebec. But quite frankly, I perceive it, and I have a thinking suspicion, I may be getting a lot of company on this, I perceive it as a race to the bottom. And the question is, who hits bottom first?
Yeah, speaking of which, Quebec politics have gotten quite spicy recently. You framed it as, will Legault still be in an office by New Year's, which is wild to think about. And then you look at the disarray in the Liberal Party.
Yeah. You could ask the same question about Pablo Rodriguez. But here's the thing. Despite the focus on today's poll, which our listeners can consult at cjd.com, the PECs are flirting almost at 40. They're at 39%, for crying out loud. That's way, way, way deep in the heart of Texas, deep in the heart of majority territory. The Liberals are, I think, it was 29. They dropped, or lower than that, 23. They dropped like 6 points. And remember, this poll was conducted before Pablo Rodriguez officially fired Mara Rizke from the Quebec Liberal Party. And I don't know about you, Robin, but when I was on air yesterday with Joanne Rakis and with some people I've been talking with since then, a lot of people got a lot more angry about that than anything that's happened so far. The announcement, the way it was phrased, the tone that was used, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I think to a certain extent, if you want to call that a break being tossed to the Liberals, perhaps, but the fact is they're in huge trouble. And it's going to be very interesting to see between now and New Year's. Certainly Legault, listen, I'm sorry, we tend to not ignore him as much because of this huge flaming train wreck that is the Quebec Liberal Party. But the fact is, Legault did not profit. The entire CAQ went up by one point in this latest poll. I think they're at like 18%. They're not even in the same galaxy as the PQ. They're going to be wiped off the map as thoroughly as, quite frankly, the Quebec Solidaire is going to be wiped off the map. But here's the thing. He's not benefiting from it at all. There is no matter how many outrageous things he says, no matter how many times he tries, to whip up the crowd, whip up the nationalists, to try and throw red meat to his base, it is not working. And you really have to wonder if someone within the cast is going to say, listen, we either are going to go down with this guy or we have to strike out on our own. But whether it's Francois Legault or whether it's the CAQ, it's pretty safe bet that between now and the election, you're going to see some fundamental changes in the composition of both, whether it's Francois Legault leaving politics, whether it's the CAQ reinventing itself or turning into or several blocks of independent MNAs. I don't know which way it's going to go. These ridiculous majorities that they kept winning, and now that they're proving to be one of the most incompetent governments in the history of Quebec, it's going to be interesting to see how they intend to spend what's left of the next year before the next general election. But all that said, we can ask the same question about Pablo Rodriguez. I asked the question yesterday, how long can the Liberals hang on? Well, with poll numbers like this, with the fact that every day we can expect some kind of headline that's going to be dropped by the old Bureau d'Enquête over at Québécois, because clearly they've got a lot of tricks in their bag, you have to wonder how long will Liberals, and not just the caucus, but those, whatever card-carrying Liberals that are out there are going to turn around and say, I really can't continue with this because it simply isn't what I signed on for. So it's going to be very, very interesting, I think, between now and New Year's to see which way Quebec's politics is going to go and what it's going to look like after January 1st.
I remember during the holidays, Jim, I was filling in for Elias Makos around this time last year, actually. And I was like, hey, maybe if the federal Liberals get a new leader, they can shake things up and they can be reelected. And I was speaking to, I think it was Tasha Keridan from the National Post. She was like, no way. Doesn't matter who's in charge. The Liberals will not be reelected. Man, things can change on a dime.
No, you know what? No, I honestly, I think you, with all due respect to Ms. Keridan, I think you had your finger a little more firmly on the pulse, because the fact is the issue was not, I know that there's, a lot of right-leaning journalists will say, well, no, you see, Canadians don't, blah, blah, blah. No, it was Justin Trudeau. There were two problems with the Federal Liberal Party, Justin and Trudeau. And when that was gone, guess what? All of a sudden, because the other big problem in Canadian politics is for the Conservatives is two words, Pierre Poilievre. With him still in office, you knew that it was going to be turned around. You knew Carney was going to take it. And as we speak, he's governing as if he has a majority. As we speak, he's governing as if there's virtually no opposition. So this is not. But once again, here it's a little different, because you could say, oh well, there's this fallback or that fallback. There ain't nothing on the other side of that curtain, Robin. You've got this was supposed to be the brightest and the best the Liberals came up with, and look what's happening now. As for Francois Legault, it's a one-man. He is the catch. So if he leaves, let's face it, whatever that party is going to leave with him.
Oh, boy. James Mennie, it is always a delight chatting with you. Thank you so much.
What a hoot. Thanks a lot. Toodaloo.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.